It was one of those flights where everyone seemed tense even before takeoff. The overhead compartments were packed, babies were crying, and passengers shuffled impatiently down the narrow aisle. I was seated near the middle window seat, ready to settle in for the journey ahead. That's when I noticed the soldier. He was young, maybe in his late 20s, with short cropped hair and a quiet demeanor. Dressed in his military fatigues, he carried only a small duffel bag, tucking it neatly under his seat as he sat in the middle row, a few seats ahead of me. He looked tired, as though he had been through a long journey already, but not everyone was impressed by his presence. A well-dressed woman, likely in her mid-40s, entered the plane with an air of entitlement. Her sleek designer bag swung at her side as she looked around for her seat. When she reached the soldier's row, she paused and scowled. "Excuse me," she said sharply, her voice loud enough to turn heads. "I think you're in my seat." The soldier looked up, slightly startled, and calmly pulled out his boarding pass. "No, ma'am," he replied politely. "This is my assigned seat." The woman's face twisted in irritation. "Well, I'm supposed to be sitting here. There must be some mistake," she snapped. "I'm not about to squeeze into the back of the plane just because someone didn't do their job." The soldier remained calm, but his expression hinted at exhaustion. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Maybe the flight attendant can help sort this out." The woman huffed loudly, crossing her arms. Unbelievable. They just let anyone take priority these days, don't they? The implication in her words was clear. A few nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. The soldier didn't argue. He simply sat there, quietly enduring her rudeness. Little did she know, this man's story would soon leave everyone speechless. The flight was taking longer to take off than expected. We sat on the runway, the engines humming softly, while the woman across from me fidgeted in her seat, still grumbling under her breath. The soldier, on the other hand, seemed lost in his own thoughts, his eyes fixed on the tray table in front of him. He wasn't engaging with her anymore, but she wasn't done. Her impatience grew as the minutes ticked by. "Honestly, they could have handled this better. I'm not sitting next to him," she muttered, just loud enough for others to hear. "I don't even know how people like that get special treatment. I'm sure he thinks he's so important, just because of what he wears." I felt my heart sink. There was so much judgment in her words, so much resentment aimed at someone she didn't even know. The soldier's eyes flickered, but he didn't respond. Instead, he sat there, quietly, gripping the armrests as the plane finally started to move. I watched him closely. There was a sadness to him, a weight that seemed to hang around his shoulders. It was as though something deep within him was fighting to stay afloat, but the world around him was doing its best to drag him down. The woman kept muttering insults, but he didn't flinch. I could tell it was bothering him, but he was too tired of fighting. As the plane reached cruising altitude, the hum of the engines settled into a soft background noise, and the flight attendants began to serve drinks. I reached for my water, glancing at the soldier again. There was something about him, a quiet strength mixed with deep sorrow, that drew me in. It was then that I heard a soft voice, almost drowned out by the sound of the plane. "I know it's not easy," the soldier said, his voice calm but weary. "But this isn't what I signed up for. I signed up to protect people, to keep them safe. And this feels like a betrayal." The woman's face twisted in confusion, her harsh words faltering. "What do you mean by that?" The soldier didn't answer immediately. He stared ahead as though trying to find the words. "I've been away for months. Been through some stuff I can't even explain. And when I finally get to come home, all I get is this. People judging me. People who don't know what it's like to serve. What it's like to lose people." He paused, his voice growing softer. "I didn't ask for this life, but it's the life I chose. And now, it's like no one cares. Like I don't matter." For the first time, the woman seemed to hesitate. Her anger was still there, but it was clouded now by something else, something unfamiliar. She looked at the soldier, really looked at him, and in that moment, I saw a flicker of regret cross her face. I I didn't mean to offend you, she said, her voice trembling for the first time. I don't know why I said those things. I've just been so caught up in my own life, in my own problems, I couldn't see beyond them. I'm sorry. The soldier didn't answer immediately. His gaze softened, but there was still a distance in his eyes. He'd been hurt too many times to let go of the walls he'd built, but for some reason, this apology felt genuine. I understand, he said, his voice quieter now. I've seen a lot, lost a lot, but the hardest part is not just the battles out there. It's the battles we fight inside, the ones people don't see, and sometimes we forget to be kind. For a moment, the woman didn't know what to say. She seemed to struggle with her emotions, unsure of how to bridge the gap between her world and his. But then something remarkable happened. She reached out, her hand trembling, and placed it on his arm. The soldier looked up, surprised. I've been wrong, she whispered. I can't even begin to imagine what you've been through. I'm so sorry. I was just so angry. The tension that had been building between them slowly began to dissolve. The flight attendant passed by, and there was a strange sense of calm that settled over the cabin, as if the moment had changed everything. The rest of the flight passed in an almost surreal quietness. The woman and the soldier didn't speak much after that, but there was a new understanding between them. She no longer seemed angry or resentful, and he no longer seemed like a stranger she'd just met. There was a connection, fragile but real. As we approached our destination, the captain's voice came over the loudspeaker, announcing our descent. The plane began to tilt, and the world outside the windows turned from the endless sky to the sprawling city below. But I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd just witnessed. The way a single moment, a small gesture of apology, had the power to change everything. The woman, who had come aboard so cold and judgmental, now seemed human, vulnerable, real. And the soldier, who had carried the weight of his service alone, now carried something else. Hope. When the plane finally landed, I could see the soldier stand, stretch his tired limbs, and grab his bag. The woman stood beside him, her eyes no longer filled with disdain. Instead, there was respect. I hope you get the peace you deserve, she said softly. The soldier turned, offering a small, genuine smile. I think I'm starting to find it. As the passengers shuffled off the plane, I couldn't help but feel that sometimes the hardest battles weren't fought in foreign lands. Sometimes they were fought right here, in the hearts of people who were willing to change, to understand, and to grow.